Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, July 11th, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about the COVID-19 vaccine and its relation to previous presidential election results and why the politicization of the vaccine impacts both Democrats and Republicans. In the United States of America, everything is politicized, including the COVID-19 vaccine, something that has been instrumental in opening this country back up and something that will make many groups of this country much safer in terms of how they react to COVID-19. And while there has been major efforts from both Democrats and Republicans, there is a significant portion of the country lagging behind in vaccinations relative to the other, which is quite interesting and quite alarming. On your screen now, you will see the vaccinations and how they're going in each individual state by county. But I've gone ahead and just sorted it by individual state and territory. We're not focused too much on the territories today because we are going to be looking at the correlation between the 2016 election results and the vaccination efforts. On your screen right here are the 2016 presidential election results. Hillary Clinton received 227 electoral votes, won 232. Donald Trump received 304, won 306. As you can see here, many red states, many blue states, and now I'm going to flip over and show you the map of the states with a 70% threshold for the first dose. Now, before we do that, I'm going to tell you why I'm using 70%, and that is what the CDC and others tend to use as the benchmark for eventual herd immunity, to a point where around 70 to 75% of the state itself needs to be fully vaccinated in order for herd immunity to be reached. Now, 70% typically is at that point where you can add in the people who received COVID-19 that won't get vaccinated, and you can count the people who have been vaccinated, and pretty much 70% is that cutoff where 7 in 10 people in these states have received at least one dose, where it starts to become much safer to open things back up. So, on your screen right now, we are going to be looking at the states where 70% of the state or more has received a first dose, and that is outlined in blue, or filled in blue. And the states where less than 70% have been vaccinated are filled in red. Now, what you might notice here is that this is very similar to the 2016 map. In fact, there's only two differences: Pennsylvania and Nevada. Take a look. I'm going to switch back and forth so you can see the difference here. There isn't much. That's why this is alarming. The COVID-19 vaccine has been so politicized that it's mimicking our presidential election results to a point where it's an exact replica of what was a very contentious presidential election. And the surprising thing about it is that Donald Trump, as the former president of the United States, has gone on to right-wing media sources and encouraged people to get vaccinated, has gone into mainstream media sources and spoken to the press and said, get your vaccine. I got it. Melania got it. Ivanka Trump recently sent out an Instagram post, maybe not recently, around 2 months ago, saying, go get your vaccine. A huge influx of comments of people attacking her. But at the end of the day, this is something that Trump and his family have been trying to push the American public to do, which is why 70% is a better benchmark. I also think that's something to point out as well. When you're at 70%, this means Democrats and Republicans are getting vaccinated, not just Democrats. But as it looks here, it's very clear that the states that voted for Hillary Clinton back in 2016, which are also just so happen to be states that were first to respond to COVID-19 as the pandemic began, are the states with the highest vaccination numbers out of the rest of the nation. The only two exceptions to the 2016 presidential election results are Pennsylvania and Nevada. When you flip those two states back to how they voted, the entire map stays the same. That's fascinating. That is also alarming, that we are in a position where the vaccine, which has saved lives and continues to save lives, is now in a position where it is mimicking our presidential election results. And the vaccine itself has proven to be effective enough so that we are looking at states dropping their mask mandates. Here are our outdoor mask mandates for the United States. What do you notice? There's only one state in particular, the state of Hawaii, where they require inside businesses / public buildings to require mask mandates. The 49 other states, including the District of Columbia, do not have any mask mandates for public outside activities, and for vaccinated individuals do not have any mandatory ones except for certain parts of the state. For example, in hospitals, there's a mask requirement. And of course, a lot of it is up to the discretion of the business or the organization. So if you're going to, let's say, for instance, you're going to Giant, which is your supermarket, or Safeway, or whatever it might be, right? Publix, wherever you are, they have the liberty to require mask mandates. But the state itself is not forcing them to require them, is not saying you must wear them. As you can see here, a number of states in orange have no more mask requirements statewide. Many of these actually are states that have Democratic governors. For instance, Minnesota, Wisconsin. These are two states with Democratic governors where there is no mask mandates. And some of these states are in yellow, where I will say that this is mask required in all or some situations for unvaccinated people. So then you can probably group that in with the orange for many of these states where most people won't be impacted by this, such as Colorado or Washington or Pennsylvania or Connecticut or Rhode Island or Vermont or Delaware, where 70% of the state or more has received one dose. And this is amongst the 18 plus population. So really, that does sort of narrow the population group a little bit more, but still should be pointed out and can be used because that's when people start to follow their own political beliefs and start to actually inform themselves of certain things. But the main thing is that looking at the mask mandates across the nation is that people are trusting in the vaccine enough that the governors of some of these Democratic states with high numbers are dropping the mandates. But for the rest of these states, even states where the number of people here aren't too high in terms of vaccinations, the mask mandates are dropping as well, which is something that can be brought up as a major issue within these states. But for the rest of them, they are traveling smoothly through this pandemic because of the vaccine, because they've been able to receive them at such a high rate, and because they've been able to distribute them at such a high rate. That's when these states are starting to be much more comfortable, these more liberal states, Vermont, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maine. So the main takeaway is that while the vaccines have been pushed on both sides, only Democratic states seem to be the ones that have, or at least the 2016 ones, are the ones that have heavy vaccination numbers, which is honestly a very good look for those states. And it does sort of raise concerns about what happens next for the rest of the nation. I mean, herd immunity is something that the Biden administration certainly has been trying to reach, but the fact is they aren't reaching these red states probably because they didn't win them in 2016. They may have won Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Arizona in 2020, but when you're looking at some of those numbers, it doesn't seem like they did. Wisconsin, Michigan, slightly there. Arizona and Georgia, a different story. But it is quite interesting to see how Joe Biden's approval rating has pretty much fluctuated not too heavily amongst COVID-19. When he was first starting out in office, he received an approval rating of plus 20 by the end of January. On COVID-19, this approval rating really hasn't changed. I mean, it was in a position where it was plus 38, plus 40, plus 25, plus 32, plus 19, and today it stands at plus 38, plus 30, plus 33, plus 31, plus 36, plus 22. I mean, this approval rating in terms of how he handled the COVID-19 situation, the COVID-19 pandemic, has remained roughly the same, the positive response from the American public. But sooner or later, it's going to reach a point where this will no longer become a prevalent issue. But for many of these states where, you are looking at 99% of hospitalized individuals with COVID-19 are unvaccinated, then it might become a more important issue. There is a huge difference here with the vaccine numbers, by state and the 2016, not a huge difference. There's a huge correlation here, which is what is very alarming, I would say, for just the safety and security and well-being of some of these citizens. Personally speaking, I informed you guys that I received the vaccine a while back, right? And, I received Pfizer, I received both doses. I had no side effects, thankfully. So I was very thankful with the way that my vaccine journey really ended up. But it was the same case for many of my friends and many of my relatives as well. The vaccine works. I am in a position where I can now do things that I usually couldn't have under COVID-19. Going back or to now graduation parties, going to major outdoor events, going indoor places without a mask. These are things that were completely unforeseeable a year ago, but are now completely within reach of receiving that vaccine. But Because this is now a politicized issue, the issue of COVID-19 might become unpopular in some of these states. While the American public is in a position where they are approving of Joe Biden's handling of it, in some of these redder states, this is where Democrats might have a trickier time appealing to the masses about how they handled COVID-19. I mean, based off of this map so far, Democrats wouldn't win the election if that was their sole issue, if they were just to pander to that key thing. 70% is a high number, but many of those people that are getting vaccinated in many of these states are also Republicans that wouldn't likely vote for Democrats anyway. But I just find it to be, something alarming, more so for public health than politically speaking for either party, that these numbers are so closely matched. But there is that underlying political implication that COVID-19 might not be a popular issue in Wisconsin or Michigan or Florida or North Carolina, maybe not Florida at all, really. But looking at some of these states where Democrats might be targeting ahead of 2022, they might not be able to jump in on this issue as much as they could in maybe Pennsylvania or Minnesota or Colorado, states that will have arguably close elections, but currently have good numbers for Democrats in terms of handling COVID-19. So, I really think that this is something that will be discussed a little bit further. I believe that the Biden administration has determined that they will be knocking on doors the same way they did with the census, not the Biden administration, but the same way the government did with the census, asking people, do you have any questions about the vaccine? Why haven't you gotten vaccinated? Here's what you can do to go get vaccinated. And that is something that I think will, number one, in a sense, help the Democratic Party, and number two, help the rest of the country get healthier, get the rest of the country on a track to reaching herd immunity, because this is something that we've been looking for quite some time. This is something that the American public really has been waiting for, a complete reopening of the nation. And they've got it in some states, but not in all. They have not gotten it in every single state. If you're looking at the states, though, that require masks indoors, there aren't that many either. Looking at some of these statewide orders, California, Connecticut, the District of Columbia, Hawaii, Illinois. Let's keep going. I don't see any yeses. Let's see here. That's 5. Nevada, 6. New Mexico, 7. New York, 8. Puerto Rico, 9. Rhode Island, 10. We're not going to count Puerto Rico as a state for the sake of this. It's not a state. Washington, yes, 10. So that's 10 states out of the 50 that are requiring masks in, really anything relative to fully vaccinated people, unvaccinated people. The point is that this country is ready to reopen, but some of these people will be unsafe, and that harms everyone altogether. But politically speaking, because we are in America and we do have to take everything because everything is politicized at this point, you are looking at a map where it is so closely tied that you really don't find many discrepancies. You really do not find them. You find them in Pennsylvania and you find them in Nevada. And it tells you where messaging might or might not work pertaining to COVID-19. And it's not even as if many of these states are right up at that point where they will surpass 70%. When you're taking a look, let's go ahead and see if we can find it here. Based off of these states that are organized by 70%, some of them are close. Wisconsin at 66, Nebraska at 66, Florida at 65, but then it starts to drop. Some states are as low as 47. 50, 51, 51. In terms of fully vaccinated, the numbers get worse. Alabama at 42, Mississippi at 43, versus other states such as Vermont, which is best in the nation right now, at 77. A huge decrease. And the only thing that really differs those two is partisanship. Which side do they lean towards? Vermont goes to Joe Biden with 66% of the vote. Trump wins Mississippi with 58% of the vote. There's a big difference there. The politicization of this vaccine has created it to a point where Republican states don't get vaccinated, but Democratic states do. And that's something that should not be happening. This country should not have this matching, connection between 2016 election results and the vaccine. Relating it to the 2020 election results, the map gets a little bit different. But keep in mind the narrow margins that Biden won in Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Arizona. All of those states by 3 points or less. He won Pennsylvania by 3 points or less, and Nevada, but again, goes to show that those states where they could be flipped based off the 2016 results, and it would, create the correct map, shows you that even in some of these states where Biden won narrowly, the numbers are lagging behind or sometimes ahead. But What I think that both parties should do moving forward, for the sake of the nation, is encourage this vaccine to get out there. I know that some of you guys that are watching this video might be apprehensive, but I can tell you in full confidence that this is not going to put you in a bad position. The vaccine is not bad for you. The vaccine is something that has been helping our nation return to a sense of normalcy. If you don't want to get vaccinated, I would ask you that it would be, follow what your state requires. Follow what they ask of you to do, what the CDC asks of you to do. But I really want you to research this vaccine and really dive into some of these sources that are telling you not to do it. Because we shouldn't have this type of map where there seems to be almost a one-to-one replication of election results. This doesn't help anyone at this point. The only thing that it does, maybe politically speaking, is suggest which regions of the nation Democrats might have an easier time expanding on COVID-19 like they did in early 2021 with the stimulus checks. But beyond that, there's not much else that they could do, politically speaking. But besides politically speaking, just as a point of public health, this should not be happening. This is not what I would like to see. This is not what many of us would like to see, because we know that this is not a result that is beneficial for anyone. To have red states lagging behind significantly and have blue states skyrocketing ahead to herd immunity, it's not something that we really want to see for the sake of the American public and the sake of our hospital workers, healthcare workers in general, first responders, whatever it might be. This all holds significant implications, and we should keep that in mind as we move forward. So this video was not necessarily as political as it was a little bit more informative about the vaccines and the mandates and all, but I did want to point it out as, it is something that can be taken in a political implication, but the main takeaway is that this connection should never happen in this country. We are a nation that has received the most vaccines out of any nation in the United States, any nation in the world, and we should be encouraging people to get vaccinated because it is something that will help put us back on the right track. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my 2022 midterm election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.